off, as you highlighted in your speech, it's really through innovation and technology that we've really unlocked an energy renaissance in the United States. I would like to know from your side, with all the technology that's been used, we really feel from an industry's perspective that there's been tremendous regulatory overreach in trying to really pull back that innovation from the United States. So what would you do as President of the United States in order to really unlock the future of energy production in this country?
Well, first, of course, it's true. I mean, the EPA is rolling out rule after rule after rule. And it's worth thinking about for a moment this. We were intended to be a nation of laws. We have become a nation of rules. The EPA is a bureaucracy. They are elected by no one. They are accountable to no one. And unfortunately, most of the rules that the EPA, the FCC, the National Labor Relations Board are rolling out right now are being rolled out along purely partisan lines. In other words, this is about the application of rules according to a ideology. And the EPA has decided that their ideology, which is not founded in science, ladies and gentlemen, that their ideology calls for the destruction of certain industries, the destruction of coal, the destruction of oil and gas. I've been in coal mining communities. Maybe you have too. I have seen what 40% unemployment looks like. I have seen what it looks like when people whose families have been in the coal mining business for generations, who have been proud to power America, are told by their government, what you do is evil. We're not going to let you do it anymore. The truth is, all of these regulations have to be rolled back, not because we don't want to be good stewards of our planet. Of course we want to be good stewards of our planet. But we have to understand that the only way to solve intractable problems is by innovation. That's how we always solve intractable problems. Meanwhile, while we are destroying our own coal industry, just as one example, or stopping the oil and gas industry from exporting, we are watching as China fires up 4 or 5 new coal-powered plants every single week, and Iran is about to start exporting oil. We are shooting ourselves in the head and the foot, and it is not because of science. It is because of ideology and an unaccountable bureaucracy. And so we need to start rolling all of this back, and we need to make sure that any single rule that is proposed for this nation has to have congressional oversight. That's why I've called on the Congress to pass the RAINS Act, which actually gives Congress the authority, as they should have it, to look at the regulation and determine whether it makes sense or not. It's not that there's no role for government, but for heaven's sakes, the government has become a crushing weight. All of those agencies, 400 pages of regulation over the internet rolled out by the FCC on purely partisan lines. How do you suppose that's going to turn out? The National Labor Relations Board on purely partisan lines, just because they've decided it was time, decided to change a 100-year-old definition of a franchisor and a franchisee because they have a political agenda. The good news is people have started to figure this out. It's why 82% of the American people think the professional political class doesn't work for them anymore. And it's why 75% of the American people think the federal government is corrupt, picking winners and losers to feather their own nests instead of to serve the people who pay for the government.
If you let me bring the mic to you before you ask your question.
Some people are quick to question your leadership and your ability to execute strategy during your tenure at HP. I personally feel like you have the qualities of transformational leader, and I know you kind of touched on it earlier. But how else do you defend against that and your ability to execute your platform when you are president, hopefully?
You know, one of the things that's interesting, somebody once asked me, what's the difference between business and politics? And thank you for asking that question, by the way. What's the difference between business and politics? And here's the difference. Politics is a fact-free zone. People just say things. People just say things. The thing is, business is not a fact-free zone. In fact, business is a fact-filled zone. So as chief executive of Hewlett-Packard, I had to stand every 90 days and defend our results in excruciating detail. And if I misrepresented those results in any way, I could be held criminally liable. Now, just suppose for a moment that anyone else running for president was held criminally liable for what they said. So, here's some facts about my record. I was recruited. I wasn't looking for a job. I was recruited by the board of Hewlett-Packard because that company was falling behind. They had no strategy. They had a culture that had become stultified, a vast, hulking bureaucracy. They were falling behind in every product in every market. And in technology, if you are lagging, you are losing. And so they needed transformation. I also happened to coincide, my 6-year tenure at Hewlett-Packard happened to coincide with the worst technology recession in 25 years. The NASDAQ dropped 80%. It's taken 15 years for it to recover, and many of our strongest competitors literally disappeared, taking every job with them because they did not make the tough calls necessary to survive. And yet, despite those tough times, we took a company that was lagging behind and turned it into a leader in every product and every market category. We not only doubled the size of the company, we quadrupled its top-line growth rate, which is hard to do in a recession. We quadrupled its cash flow. We tripled its rate of innovation to almost 15 patents a day. We saved 80,000 jobs. We went on to grow to 150,000 jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, I will run on that track record all day long. And by the way, I think the citizens of this great nation actually are looking for someone to go into the White House and make a tough call occasionally, actually make a decision, actually cut a bureaucracy down to size. At the end of my 6-year tenure, I got fired in a boardroom brawl that lasted for 2 weeks. And you know why? Because when you lead, when you challenge the status quo, you make enemies. It is why people don't lead. It's hard. I made some enemies. And I got fired over a matter of principle that I didn't think board members should take their disputes with me into the press. But interestingly, a couple weeks ago, the man who led my ouster, a gentleman named Tom Perkins, took out an op-ed in the New York Times, paid for a full-page ad, I didn't know he was going to do it, and said, I was wrong, she was right, she was a great CEO, the board was dysfunctional, she's going to make a magnificent president of the United States, and I'll back her all the way.
Thank you so much for coming to Oklahoma. I have one quick question. Will you sign the Trans-Canada Keystone Pipeline Agreement?
Yes, ma'am. Talk about a self-inflicted wound. How long did it take Hillary Clinton to finally take a position on this? 2 years. And notice how she parsed her language. She said she wasn't going to sign it because she thought it would complicate our efforts to fight climate change. Why do you suppose she used that word? Because the facts are these. The facts are these. What we're doing now to transport that oil is far worse for global warming, far higher levels of global greenhouse gas emissions than if we built the pipeline. But she couldn't admit that because that would say it's ideology, not science, not fact. So she had to use the word complicate. Of course I'll sign it. 1.2 million jobs. By the way, you're going to hear lots of Democrats criticize my record, Hillary Clinton among them. Mrs. Clinton has never created a job. She has never saved a job, and her policies destroy jobs day after day after day, including this decision. 1.2 million jobs. Thank you very much, Mrs. Clinton. There's a gentleman up here. Uh-oh, we're going to have a feedback here.
Mrs. Fiorina, the contest will not come down to polls, but delegates. I have no knowledge of your ground organization and how much energy and resources that you've put into that, especially in the early primary states. Can you enlighten us on that, please?
So what a great question. That says, gee, I really want you to win. I want to know that you know how to win. Thank you for that question, sir. We have always imagined this to be a long game. And it's going to be a process of elimination before it's a process of selection. And just to let you know, when I launched my campaign on May 4th, less than 3% of the American voters had ever heard my name or knew I was running for president. In other words, I had really low name ID. And when I went to the Fox News debate on August 6th, less than 40% of voters had ever heard my name or knew I was running for president. And when I went to the CNN debate, 50% had never heard my name and didn't know I was running for president. And yet, we already were in the top 5 in the polls. Now, of course, my name ID is up, in part because the stage collapsed on me the other day, but nobody was hurt. But with the lowest name ID in the field still, I am number 2 or number 3 in all the national polls and in the statewide polls. So what does that tell you? It tells you that people want a leader who can get things done. It also tells you that when people hear me and see me and listen to me, they tend to support me. Long before people knew who I was, we were out doing the groundwork necessary to win. So whether that's building a ground game in the early primary states, don't you worry, we are. I have been traveling to the state of Ohio and Iowa and New Hampshire, just as 2 examples, for over a year. I've made more trips than most candidates. And we also are doing things like funding ballot access in all 50 states. Ladies and gentlemen, I can win this job. I need your support. I need your votes. I need your prayers. But I can win this job. And if you care about your industry, you need me to win this job. But once I've won the job, more importantly, I can do the job. Because the job needs doing now.